a sign of contrast in an age-old land. A land steeped in an ancient vague past, bisected by a strip of today. We are on our way over the desert time machine to a visit to Antiquity. We are heading east, toward the Dead Sea and Masada.
The road proceeds eastward into a vast wilderness, crosses several dry riverbeds, and reaches the rock of Masada at the eastern edge of the Judean desert, with a sheer drop of more than 1,300 feet to the shores of the Dead Sea. It is a place of majestic beauty, but also the site of one of the most dramatic episodes in Jewish history.
Thousands of volunteers from 28 countries in all parts of the world, Jews and non-Jews, young and old, farmers and scientists, came to Masada at their own expense and worked with dedication in the harsh climate and under primitive dwelling conditions. In this supreme 11-month effort, October 1963 to April 1964 and December 1964 to March 1965, 97% of the built-up area of Masada has been laid bare. Josephus Flavius wrote in his document, The Jewish War, quote, "It is said Herod prepared this fortress as a refuge in time of need against the two dangers that he always envisioned. One, that the Jewish people might depose him and put in a king from the royal house, which had reigned before him on the throne. And the second, even worse than the first, the fear of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt."
The trail to the top leads up the ramp built by the Romans on the western slope of Masada to bring up their heavy machinery of war. This is one of the most remarkable siege structures of the Roman army which exists in the world today.
Well, I rather doubt that the Romans bothered to put up some metal guardrails. I also have the feeling that those who used the trail in those days were in a little better condition than I was and found the going a little easier. The climb did not faze those who made the pilgrimage from far and wide to this marvel, though, and the trail was alive with a stream of people in constant movement up and down. The terrain along this trail seemed to be more vertical than horizontal, which was, of course, a major factor in Herod's decision to build this fortress here in 40 BC, and in the Zealots holding out so well during the Great Revolt of AD 66 to AD 73. The Western Gate. Welcome to Masada, and happily the top of the trail. We pass here through the wall that surrounds the whole of Masada. What better place to rest a moment than on the stone benches in the waiting room of the Western Palace? Masada was far from primitive, but was a well-planned and executed construction of palaces, storerooms, and cisterns or reservoirs with all the comforts of a king of those days. Herod saw to that. The Western Palace was a royal palace for residential and ceremonial use, with an area of more than 34,000 square feet. It was a complete palace with its throne room, king's bedchamber, courtyards, kitchens, and dining hall, storerooms, and even a small bathhouse. It was a place of blatant luxury for the high isolation of Masada. A sign here of that luxury is the great mosaic in the palace. From the eastern wall, a new view unfolds, that of the Dead Sea and of the hills of present-day Jordan. This is a characteristic part of the Herodian wall. consisting of an outer and inner wall connected by partitions which form casemates. On the wall, soldiers made their rounds. In later years and during the siege by the Roman hordes, the zealots added to this area and turned it into their living quarters. The oldest synagogue found in Israel, or in fact found anywhere in the world, is this one here in Masada. Constructed originally by Herod to accommodate those of the Jewish faith among his people, it was altered by the Zealots, in which they screened off the northwest corner. Here, excavators located 2 of the many scrolls found in Masada, one being chapters from the book of Ezekiel, including extracts from chapter 37, the vision of the dry bones. The other scroll contained parts of the 2 final chapters of the book of Deuteronomy. The storehouses are an enormous system of magazines for storing years' supplies of food, weapons, and other essentials. In some there are rows upon rows of storage jars, all identical in each storehouse, but of different shape from those in other storehouses, indicating that each storehouse contained a different kind of food. Masada supported 2 major palaces, the western and the northern, which consisted of 3 terraces. While the western was the official residence, the northern, shown here, was the king's private villa. This is the upper terrace, which contained the living room of the palace. The lower terrace consists of a courtyard surrounded by 2 rows of columns, separated by a stola. The walls are covered with frescoes, imitating colored marble facings. There are many capitals carved out, which are of the Corinthian order. Herod and his followers lived in luxury from the time of construction in 40 BC. Not so the Zealots, who captured and destroyed a Roman garrison there at the beginning of the Great Revolution in 66 AD. After the rest of Israel was taken, there remained only Masada as the last holdout, and the siege began. Below you can see the outline of one of the 8 camps set up by the Romans as he prepared to capture Masada. It was in the lower terrace of the northern palace that impressive remains of Masada's tragic end were found. The skeletons of a man, a young woman, and a child. After burning all they could of their hoard, all laid down to await death, as administered by the 10 chosen for the task, 9 of whom who were put to death by one who then took his life. Professor Yigael Yagin, head of the excavation, writes in his book, Masada, quote, "It is thanks to the heroic stand, to their choice of death over slavery, and to the burning of their humble chattels as a final act of defiance to the enemy, that they elevated Masada to an undying symbol of desperate courage, a symbol that has stirred hearts throughout the last 19 centuries." This view of the Dead Sea is through the windows facing east in the Byzantine church from the 5th century. Herod and his followers are of course long gone, as are the Zealots and the Romans who followed them. In the 4th and 5th century, a few Christian monks visited and built cells in a number of places in or near the ruined buildings. The main hall of the church, built during this period, has a colored mosaic floor, of which only one corner has been preserved. These monks and their successors stayed more than 100 years. Then Masada reverted to a dusty mesa of legend once more.